I often heard that as you entered the perch, the bustle of Denevron would begin to crescendo, and till it peaked in the market. The Tattered Mantle. I've heard so many stories of this tavern. Always rowdy.
My mentor used to regale me with stories about the Ironwalk after
Artisans, metal workers, and crafters also had stands here, though the smiths were by far the main draw for travellers.
The record said this place was registered to our enchantress of interest, Lucia. It sure doesn't look like a saboteur or smuggler's den. On the workings of Archons by L. de Crassus. Seems promising. Dom?
Certainly topical. When the references to it in those notes you found, come to think of it, definitely bring it back. Another piece of the puzzle. place for weavers in Lowtown to gather.
Three sisters. Many weavers hostel here.
Before the surge, the Denevron market was famous across the Maida. Caravans left the Enclave with enchanted treasures.
Careful! A sledgewyrm can throw things over 3 times its size. Strand. Wonderful.
Trover's Gate was the end of the Strand Road. Led through Forbridge and beyond the Vale.
Brokers at the market loom gate.
Where? Oh, there's a small panel here. Struck a vein, as my dad used to say.
Wait, I was half listening. Are you hurt?
Metaphor. Her dad was a miner.
We've got a tally sheet of some sort. Series of numbers below. And a bunch of garbled text below that. I have no idea what I'm looking at.
I might.
Lower Denevron was hit hard by the surge too.
Perhaps even harder. It looks as though it's been ripped apart.
The Undergreen. This is where the seediest of deals were done. Did you manage to find enough softwood?
If you need more than this, the Don Brennick Pine preservationists will come for me. Here you go.
Oh, great.
You don't sound as happy as I thought you'd be.
It's just that what I'm realizing is the Weaver Band really needs Drake scales. Like, give or take 90 to be safe.
Wait, 90 Ash Peak Drake scales?
Yeah, not the easiest thing to get, but maybe instead of fighting drakes, you could find one of their nests. I think they shed, right?
Kaz, I'm glad I've been able to help you, but I do have other duties as point. And this sounds time-consuming. What could we possibly need 90 scales for?
Because... It's hard to explain, but... Please, can you trust me? I just really need you to trust me.
All right. I'll see what I can do.
Casbin, what's going on? Are we outfitting an army?
Because it's... I just think we could...
Don't you think Bryn's got you pretty well stocked at this point?
But... You're right. I got carried away. Sorry.
It's okay.
Thanks for all your help. Excuse me, I'm gonna put all this away now.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
If you say so. Good work, Bryn. We'll take care of the rest of this.
We will never replace it all. How could I have been so careless?
A dead body and a hidden cache of materials. It sounds like the start of a Skuld's tale.
All we need is a saber conveniently placed on the mantle and we're set.
More seriously, you said you had an idea about that sheet?
Remember that I used to work the trade lanes?
I do.
The dockers always wanted big loads for the cranes. But certain things, like, say, herbs, you'd only ship in small quantities. Over the years, the convoys developed a system where you'd have runners and haulers. Runners would make quick trips and bring small goods to a drop. Haulers would pack the cargo together and make longer hauls to the docks.
You think we're looking at a similar system, then?
Absolutely I do. It's the sheet you found. That's a requisition for a runner if I've ever seen one. And note how it says Scout Group 23 here. That's a lot of groups.
Which means my mysterious observer is part of a large organization.
And an active one.
When you say requisition...
Think of it like an order. Bread, cheese, carrots. But left at the drop for the runner to prioritize before the next gather. It takes forethought. There's necessary lag between the order going out and being filled. But any logistician worth their salt can see a few months ahead and plan accordingly.
How can you be sure the Enclave folks would use similar methods to yours?
It's centuries old. And you don't fix what wasn't broken. Especially in a crisis. And from the state of the capital, they were definitely in crisis.
Do the items they're asking for seem important?
No, I don't think so. Lane thinks the garble at the bottom might be, but not the order itself. They're prioritizing fabricated items over raw goods.
What would that indicate?
At a guess, our Hearthsiders have lost, or were expecting to lose, production capacity and wanted backup parts.
Kaz, I have to ask. How does it feel having this specific piece of information at hand right when we need it?
Why?
Because if we suddenly needed to know about Calnhaven or export quotas, I would feel pretty special.
How is that a thing you know exactly?
Dad was a miner. A really good one.
Promise you won't tell the others?
I can manage that.
Then yes. Yes, it feels amazing.
What do we do with this information then?
At the bottom of the sheet, there's that series of numbers and letters. Those would represent drop points. I did some digging with Lane, and they're referring to coordinates on a map of the Enclave that was made just before the surge. L7 is part of the capital, see? That's where you found this drop. So, I'm inferring that these other marked coordinates are just as likely to have drops.
I'll check them then.
If nothing else, we could find materials for our own stocks. But I'm hoping there's more.
Maybe where our Hearthsiders are hiding.
Also, Lane was looking over the orders and wanted to talk to you about the writing along the bottom.
More drops, and talk to Lane. Got it.
Hey, Bryn. Sorry I got carried away with our errands.
It's okay, Kaz. What was going on with that, though? Are you alright?
Yeah. Sometimes there's so much to do, it's hard to keep my head on straight.
Maybe you should take a day to relax. Our ongoing disaster isn't going anywhere.
I don't know how anyone relaxes in here. What about you?
Me?
Yeah. What do you do to relax?
You know, the forest around the camp is actually pretty nice. When I need to clear my head, I just take a short walk. The sound of rushing water from the brook is lovely. It always brings me peace.
The growl of a Kala stalking you in those treks doesn't pull you out of meditation?
Nah, it comes with the territory.
I'll stick to the campsite.
When all else fails, a nap always helps too.
For Ashar, maybe. As a Kashar, I don't need as much sleep as the rest of you.
Sure, but you need some kind of break from time to time, Kasmin.
I'll think about it.
Do you read a lot of Scald's Tales, Kaz?
I do, as a matter of fact. When I can find a transcription. But I'll read just about anything I can get my hands on.
Any favourite storytellers?
Eloisa Farthing. She's a local writer back home. Actually, a lot of her stories are set in Dunbrennig. That's what I like about them. No matter where I am in the world, I can curl up with passages describing our rainy summers or stormy winters. And it's like I'm home.
That's beautiful. Though the weather in Dunbrennig sounds terrible.
It is. What about you? Are you much of a reader?
Can't say I am. I'd rather live the adventures myself than read about them.
I suppose that makes sense. Still, if you ever want to try getting into it, Sola, Lane, and I have something of an informal book club on the go. We can give you recommendations.
Good to know. I'm surprised Dom isn't involved in that too.
He was, but his invitation was rescinded. The three of us would like to maintain a soothing mood during our meetups. He got too excited and spilled red wine on the pages of our first read, so...
Ah. I see.
Don't forget to block. The Iron Walk. Hilda told me all these amazing stories, but seeing it in person... Wow.
Sorry, who?
Oh, my mentor. She visited the Enclave regularly before the Surge. I apprenticed under her for a few years.
What did she tell you?
The noise from the forges made sure you'd only have the smiths and their clients around. But on an average day, some serious coin would trade hands. The Enclave's smithing culture was such a draw, it started to cause tensions with the other nations. It didn't help that the Enclave would actively poach the best and brightest. They had deep purses.
I've heard stories of that. Some of the Carnhaven masters had moved and never returned after the veil went up.
The Surge was horrible for everyone, of course, but I reckon a few smithing guilds were happy to not have the competition anymore.
Making the best of it, I suppose?
And make the best of it they did.
Any luck with the materials we gathered from Lucia's workshops?
Yes. I'll let Sev fill you in.
We started with the book, which was painfully dry and highly theoretical.
Unsurprising. The Enclave was notoriously tight-lipped about the construction of the arcs.
The book was still useful, as it contained a number of craft-specific terms, shorthands and annotations, all critical. Referencing the book clarified the notes.
Without it, they bordered on deranged rant, especially at the end.
Sort of a window into her thinking.
We suspect Lucia spent a long time in isolation while working on these.
She covered many topics, but the most prominent was her work into the Flood.
Who exactly was Lucia? It seems like she had a lot going on.
Brilliant, but disturbed. She harbored a severe hatred of Enclave leadership, bordering on obsession.
Reams of fiercely colorful text, just to say some very rude things, especially about the Eye, their leader.
She was also, at one point, one of the most respected enchanters in the Enclave. She worked on something she refused to name, but was clearly of deep significance to the Enclave itself. Called it the source of all our problems.
Sadly, she only danced around that subject, and never offered details.
We know the Hearthsiders spent years working in Denevron after the Surge. Why do we think Lucia ended up so far from the capital?
It's evident she disagreed with the leaders of the Enclave and gathered others around her who agreed. There's talk of several meetings taking place in the Mire, most likely to be away from prying eyes.
Called her group the Verdant Minds. Very planty.
I like it. It's poetic.
Her workshop was a little brisk, even for my tastes. Any idea why?
She was fascinated with Enclave technology, specifically the dismantling, disruption, and repurposing of it.
Remember our talk about the aeroliths and how they could influence the weather? When the effect is accidentally concentrated, it can be quite intense. We suspect she was experimenting with the aerolith in relation to the floods. She predicted their start.
How do those devices I found with her mark on them tie into all of this?
In her final notes, her obsession shifted from the Enclave's leadership to the miasma flood. She was determined to find a way to stop it. On one hand, she looked to the aeroliths as a mitigation. Could they repel the miasma?
In the end, her answer was no. And so she turned to disruption. We think the arcs were tests. Could she shut them down?
And if so, could she shut down something larger?
She was clearly successful at least once. Maybe twice if we count the one outside the Veil.
Indeed, and when we're doing more general questions, that is what we must talk about.
All intriguing information. But we should focus on the flood. Does she have an answer for us?
Partially. This is the design.
Her research led her to one conclusion: to stop the floods. She needed to disrupt a barrier of some sort. The frustrating thing is that she never explains what barrier or where it could be found.
She assumed, unfortunately, that anyone else reading it would know what she was talking about.
Her design is detailed and specific. The device it would create inverts the flow of magic in enchanted objects, disrupting them for a time.
We think the devices we found on the arcs were prototypes, small experiments to determine efficacy and duration.
So what's the catch? If the floods are still happening, clearly she didn't build one.
Lucia's thimble, as she calls it, requires some highly specialized components. It has to withstand considerable magical flow, far more than what's produced by an arc.
It's like how mass scales exponentially. Just because you can build a scale model of an aqueduct doesn't mean the real thing can support its own weight.
If, and it is a very big if, we could find those components, we could construct Lucia's thimble. We have the expertise.
We'll find them. It's just a matter of time.
I only hope we have enough.
The other thing we'll need is a source of magical flame. Solar's mantle won't be enough by itself.
I can handle that part easily. Okay, so we have clear next steps. Just one more thing. What happened to Lucia?
The flood. Our best guess, at any rate. There's no sign of her. I am going to be poring through Lucia's notes for years.
Fascinating stuff.
Perhaps not to everyone, but she was a brilliant enchanter. It's not often I read a marginal comment accompanied with a lewd doodle and go, "Flames, that's brilliant."
Dom, care to pass the time with a game of tangent?
You wanted to talk about the supply orders?
Indeed. It's about the gibberish along the bottom. Notice how the writing is in a different hand.
Yes, I can see that.
We're looking at a cipher. Someone sharing encoded notes.
Can you give me a quick rundown on encoding so I'm sure I'm following?
A favourite topic of mine? Cipher is a blanket term for securing text so that only an intended recipient can read it. They range from reasonably simple swaps of letters to complex changes that require devices or key sheets to solve. But, as notes quickly added to supply orders, the codes we are dealing with were simple by necessity.
What's your background with ciphers, Lane?
There's something of a hobby for me. Specifically, breaking them.
A fan of knowing secrets.
More a fan of information being shared freely. But also, yes, Udean nobility relies on them heavily, and being privy to the dirty laundry of the nobles is advantageous.
You're sure we're dealing with a code and not just doodles?
While possible, it's not likely that someone would scrawl nonsense on the bottom of official orders. Why do so? To practice calligraphy? To refine their writing? Perhaps. But this is decidedly not calligraphy. Ergo, cipher.
Any initial guesses as to what the cipher says?
Hard to say exactly, but we can rule out any theories that these are tied to our mysterious Lucia. The writing's wrong, the cipher is different, the circumstances don't match. What we know is these orders were for Scout Group 23, so let's assume there is an organised group of Hearthsiders arranging these drops. At a guess, this was an unofficial channel of information passed to those in the field.
Information that would be invaluable to us.
Agreed. Why encode text if it's not significant?
Sounds like we have a cipher to break. I'll keep hitting dead drops.
Any code is easier to break with more samples. We can work on it like any other research project.
Another kinetic strand.
All this light stone is reflecting the heat.
It would be so much worse if it were absorbing it.
drop somewhere around here. Let's see. Supplies. That's good. More orders. Huh.
What's up?
Drops will be assigned to specific teams and tracked individually to deal with recent concerns.
That's boss talk for we're watching you because someone had their hand in the cookie jar.
I keep thinking about how angry those notes were.
Lucia's?
Yes. The tone was acidic, and she clearly felt she'd been betrayed. Not in the general sense. It was personal. I just wish she'd been more clear about by whom.